Great, we have a bunch of people starting to sign on. I like to get started on time, so we'll get started in about 2-3 minutes.
Okay, great. What part of the country are you in?
I'm in New York.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what about you?
I'm in LA,
Oh, well, how's the weather?
like New York.
Like New York? Actually, probably not. New York's been pretty nice, so
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really cold and rainy.
I
It's
know. The rain I
wild.
heard is crazy, but hopefully it'll help some nice greenery grow.
Yeah, I am just hoping that it helps the fires. They've been pretty bad the
Yes,
past couple of years.
that is true. That is true. All right, I think we're gonna get started in a minute. I'll let a few more people. I'll wait one more minute and then we'll get started because we have a lot to get through and I want to be able to get through everything. Okay. And I don't like to keep people later than 8 o'clock because I know everyone has things to do. Well, 8 o'clock my 8 o'clock my time, 5 o'clock your time.
Yeah.
Start in a minute. Okay, people are slowly starting to come on here. Amazing. Okay, I'm gonna get started. I think we have enough people on to start, and people are slowly starting to come on. So, all right, well, everybody, welcome. For those of you who are new, welcome to our your first webinar. We used to do these monthly. We're now kind of transitioning to every other month. So for those of you who are back and have been with us before, thanks for coming back. Feels like a really long time since we've done this, but I'm really excited about this topic. March is Women's History Month, and it's, really important to discuss, I think, as much as we can and to in terms of women. And today we're talking about women and metabolism, which I think is a really, really important topic. I think it's a difficult topic. I think it's something that people go through, especially, women go through and may not know much about. So I think it's something that I think is important to, shed light on. And I'm really excited to be speaking about this tonight during this month. That's all about women. So we're gonna, quickly go through what a metabolism is, how aging specifically is an influential factor in metabolic changes for women, hormonal changes, so changes in female hormones that impact metabolism. There's a lot of interaction between hormones and metabolism, and then some healthy habits, things that we can do to adopt healthy habits to just support, long-term, a healthy long-term metabolism. So, and of course, we always like to do recipes. I think we have 1 or 2 recipes in there, and then any other remaining questions. So, for those of you who are new, and even if you've been here, feel free to ask questions as the presentation is going on. Joy, who's our moderator, who I'll introduce in a minute, she will be looking for your questions in the chat or the Q&A box. So please feel free to ask questions at any time. It really allows for really great conversation. I think there's a lot of great conversation that can come out of tonight's presentation. So definitely feel free to ask questions when you want. So a little bit about Fair Meals, for those of you who are new. So we are a 501c3 status nonprofit. So we kind of started as this, we continue to be a free online platform. But first we kind of started as a free online platform offering families healthy, simple, and affordable meal solutions. And we continue to do this through our nonprofit by providing nutrition education, mainly through partnership organizations that we have, and other avenues as well. Our mission is to empower families with the nutrition education, step-by-step recipes, and budget planning to make meals healthy, easy, and affordable. And obviously our long-term vision, what we really want to do is to combat America's chronic disease crisis by making healthy food an option for every family. There's really, and I think I share this statistic so often. So for those of you who have been here before, I apologize for sharing this again. But for those of you who are new, I'm out in New York. I'm in New York City in Manhattan, but one of the, this part of the suburban area of New York is called Long Island. And there's one area in Long Island in specific, which is a pretty low income area. One of the school districts mentions that about 61%, so more than half of the children in that school district are obese or overly or morbidly obese. So that's a really, really big problem. And a lot of that has to do with the diet. Some of that has definitely been exacerbated by COVID. And what we really just want to do is to just let everybody know that nutrition is an option. Healthy eating, healthy food is an option for every family. So a little bit about myself. So my name is Ariel Kestenbaum, and I am a registered dietitian. I founded Fair Meals to offer nutritional guidance and easy recipes that empower families to eat well on a budget. I have my master's of science in nutrition and dietetics from NYU. I am a mom and a wife, and I know how difficult it can be to provide healthy meals for my family that are also convenient and affordable. So with this resource, I really do hope to help families from all walks of life. And then tonight we have a really special moderator. We have Joy Taylor, who has a really awesome background. I'm so excited she's here. I'm going to let her talk as soon as I finish introducing her. She is a Barry University alum and accomplished national media personality and host. Her vast experience has allowed Joy to become a fixture on the national sports media scene. She is the host of Speak with Emmanuel Acco and LaShawn McCoy, airing weekdays from 4:30 to 6:00 p.m. Prior, Joy sat alongside Colin Coward of The Herd for 3 years on FS1 and Fox Sports Radio. She also acted as a play-by-play analyst for Thursday Night Football, Scouts feed on Prime Video and Twitch, as well as the Joy Taylor Show on Fox Sports Radio every Saturday. A personal goal of hers is to foster diversity in the industry. Joy also proudly founded the Joy Taylor Foundation in 2021. The nonprofit's mission is to serve the homeless, support survivors of domestic violence, and promote education and empowerment in the communities of Los Angeles, Miami, Pittsburgh, and New York City. So without further ado, I want to introduce Joy, and please feel free to share some additional words.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. This topic is something that I discuss quite often, and as a 36-year-old woman, I'm very interested in what we're going to talk about today because, my body has gone through a lot of changes as well. And I also grew up as an athlete. So I've gone from, someone who played 4 sports and was working out at a high level for, 3 to 4 hours a day to, many, many changes throughout my life. So I'm very excited to be here today and have this discussion with you.
Thank you. We're excited too. This is a big honor for us. So thanks for joining us. So I'm going to get started, and, Joy, as I mentioned, feel free to kind of come in whenever you want. I think Joy and I are going to have, I think, some really good conversation around this topic, especially since this is something that is very near and dear to her. And again, for everyone, as all of our viewers, feel free to ask questions for myself, for Joy, whenever you see fit. So we're going to just start with a little bit of background. I'm going to keep things a little bit top level because, things can definitely get, there's a lot of biochemistry behind metabolism, but there's also very easy ways to understand this. And that's kind of how I'm going to, start and lead this. So what is metabolism? So the metabolism refers to the chemical reactions that occur in the body to convert food into energy. So we speak all the time about metabolism, and people are saying, I have a fast metabolism, I have a slow metabolism. And I think a lot of people don't actually really know exactly what they're saying, but it is a very, very simple concept. So the energy is measured in units called calories. So when we're talking about calories, that's essentially what we're talking about, this conversion of food into energy.
Is there a way to know if you have a slow or fast metabolism, or is that just something that we
So
say?
it's a really good question. Um, Metabolism is one of those things that change, and as we go through this, we're going to see that it's something that changes so frequently throughout our life. Like I'll speak personally for myself. I'm somebody who I think used to have a very, very fast metabolism. I would I'd essentially be able to eat anything and really not I would not gain any weight. Um, and then, as I've gotten older, as I've had, more children, um, I've noticed my metabolism has definitely started to slow down. And a lot of that you see just by, continuing the same lifestyle and continuing, the same physical activity, the same dietary type of lifestyle and everything of that sort. And you kind of can see, um, I kind of see that change a little bit. I see the changes in my body. I see the changes in the weight that kind of stays. Um, that's kind of like the simple way, the I would say the non-scientific way of knowing.
Right.
Of course, as I mentioned, hormones have a lot to do with metabolism. And so there's a lot of, we can go get our hormone levels checked and things of that sort. And there's so many nowadays, like if you go to some like private nutrition practices, they'll be like, oh, we can test your BMR, which is what we'll talk about in a minute. So they say they can test that. Do I necessarily think those tests are 100% accurate? I'm really not so sure. There's a lot of people that are skeptical of them. I've actually I interned in a practice that did use them. And people kind of like swore by them, and they were like, okay, this is it. This is everything. And every decision was based on the results of those tests, which I'm not, so I think that there's so much that goes into play when it comes into metabolism. So I don't necessarily agree with just taking this one test of checking our BMR, our basal metabolic rate, which again, I'll talk about in a minute. But the simple answer is like the non-scientific way, the non-invasive way, let's say, of knowing is just being in tune with our bodies and seeing how how over time it changes. So yes, you could have a fast metabolism, and then at a certain point in time it can slow down. Once it slows down, it is a little bit more difficult naturally. I'm going to say naturally because we all know nowadays so many people are using things like Ozempic, right, which is all over the media, and other sorts of medications and pills that do alter our metabolisms a bit. So, I'm not going to say like, I think that's a more synthetic way of changing our metabolisms. But once we are at a certain place with our metabolism, yes, it can always kind of change a little bit. But we're not going to see these vast changes so much. So I guess it's kind of
Got it.
just body awareness to answer it in a very, very, I went a long way around that, but I think it was an important question. So thank
No,
you for
no,
asking me that.
there's a scientific answer, and then there is we used to eat 4 bowls of pasta and never gain a pound.
Exactly. So I think that's exactly what it is. Okay, so BMR, so basal metabolic rate. So BMR is the rate at which our bodies burn energy. So our bodies burn calories in different ways. So there's the resting metabolic rate, so that's as a resting state, food digestion, and physical activity. So these are the different ways that our bodies will burn calories. So there is a difference between female versus male metabolism. And yes, I know a lot of people say females have an uphill climb. And unfortunately, sometimes that is the case when it comes to metabolism. Biologically speaking, so biological sex, right? We're talking, because I know genders are really, a very different conversation nowadays than it used to be. It can be very, very sensitive, but we're talking about biological sex. So this impacts metabolic rate. So the two biological sexes are female and male. And compared to males, females do have a slower metabolic rate.
And why is that?
We'll get into that in the next few slides. But again, I think there's a lot of it does have to do with progesterone, which is the hormone, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Progesterone and versus estrogen, right? Estrogen's more dominant in males, progesterone more dominant in females, and I think that plays a very, very large role in metabolism. But we will get to that in a few minutes. But yeah, so if sometimes women or females rather feel that, maybe men have it easier. First of all, they don't. But if sometimes they feel that way, in terms of metabolism, maybe that's true. But they don't always have it easier. We females are awesome. So we have a lot of really great things
Yes, we do.
coming our way too. So so there's several factors that contribute to the slower metabolic rate. So muscle mass is one of them. So naturally higher in men, muscle mass burns more energy at rest. That's just the case. That's just how it is. And by the way, when I said estrogen before, I meant testosterone. So I'm so sorry for making that mistake. But when I say males to have, higher testosterone levels, obviously,
Right.
than women. So body size, women tend to have smaller body sizes than men. So it just requires less energy. And then testosterone, which is what I meant to say before, this is predominantly male hormone that increases metabolism. And we're going to see later on that progesterone, whether really high levels or low levels, that can slow down metabolism. So testosterone just generally predominantly increases the metabolism. And that's just kind of the way that is.
And females have testosterone also.
Yes, females do have testosterone.
So I did a test a few years ago to measure the levels. I don't know if it was the test that you were talking about, but
It might be.
It checked like a bunch of different levels
Yeah.
of things in my body, and I had no testosterone on.
Really?
Like zero testosterone. I
That's
don't know
so
how accurate it was,
interesting.
but it was concerning, obviously, because obviously men have more testosterone than
Right.
women, and when you think of testosterone, you don't think of having a lot of it or needing it as
Yeah.
a woman, but you
Yeah.
do need some of it.
You do
And
need some of it
obviously
for
it plays
sure.
a big role in your metabolism as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just the thing with hormones in general. And I think, I'm shocked to hear that, but I'm also not, because there's so many hormones are just one of those things that like, it's like a levels game, right? It's like some
Right.
people can have really high amounts of one and really, really low amounts of others. That's practically nothing. So that's basically probably what went on with you. But that is really, really interesting. And so testosterone is just one of those hormones that it does increase metabolism. It is predominantly a male hormone. Again, women do have it, but that's just kind of how it is, whether fair or not. Okay, so getting older and metabolism. So aging is an influential factor in metabolic changes for women. So what kind of happens here? So lean body mass decreases. So women naturally lose lean body mass or muscle, right? That's why it's
Right.
really, really important as we get older, especially for women. Men, and men as well, but really, really for women, and a lot of doctors put a lot of emphasis on weight bearing exercises, because we really don't want to lose muscle. We don't want muscle wasting as they get older. So men do too, but women have less to begin with. So they're already working with less. So having less muscle decreases your metabolic rate.
And
So that's,
muscle is also not just like big
yes,
flexing muscles. Like it's your
exactly.
muscle mass or whatever like fits your body.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
I think
So
sometimes, especially with women, like we hear muscle and start freaking out thinking we have to do like these huge bodybuilding
lift,
exercises
no, no,
in order
no,
to
we
build muscle.
definitely not, definitely not. By the way, they even say like, but you know, weight bearing exercise can also be, and this shouldn't be our primary way of doing physical activity or doing weight bearing exercise, but even like heavy grocery bags, right? Walking them from the store to the to your car, from your car inside your house, things like that. Like these are that's considered a weight bearing activity, I should say. I'm not
And
going to say an
some
exercise, but it's an activity
resistance stuff as well. Like I'm a Pilates
for
girl.
sure. Yes.
So like I do my cardio in the gym obviously, but I'm like I enjoy the and there is some weights in Pilates too, but it's all like
Yeah.
very light, but it's a lot of body resistance and
Yes.
you know that helps to build up those
For
muscles.
sure, for sure. Yes, I'm big into Pilates too. I started like a year and a half ago, and it's amazing, like the changes I see. So, definitely agree with that. But any sort of, I guess, physical activity that I guess kind of prevents muscle wasting, is going to be super, super important. But over time, it does decrease. So, body and lifestyle changes. We may have a question here.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Let me make sure. Yeah, you
Thanks.
guys can
Yeah.
drop questions in there. So, can
Yeah.
thyroid glands increase or decrease metabolism? I know we have something on thyroids later in the
Yes. We do have something on thyroid. So I'm gonna hold this question just because I want to
okay.
see if it's gonna
So we will
answer
answer
this
your
question.
question.
But that's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. So let's keep that open. Body, lifestyle, and changes. So children have higher metabolic rates because they undergo several periods of rapid growth, right? Our children are essentially growing all the time. So they do have very, very high metabolic rates. During puberty is one example of this. So adults are done growing and often adopt, sedentary lifestyles like an office job, and they're just not kind of moving the same way as children are or adolescents. And that's only one factor. Again, as you get older, we mentioned all of the things that happen, but one small factor is just generally, adults tend to, on average, a lot of them do have more of a sedentary lifestyle, whereas in schools, right, PE, gym, is a requirement in schools, and then a lot of kids are doing after school activities, and a lot of them are in sports teams, and there just is naturally more moving around. Whereas adults, a lot of times they'll be like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym, and then, that's their physical activity for the day, which is great. Everybody should, go and get out and be physically active. But they're not moving in that same way.
Right.
So again, this is not everything, but this is one, small factor, just lifestyle changes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned it at the beginning when I played sports in high school. I mean, outside of just even being in school, walking from class to class, like you're not really sitting as much as you think you are when you're at that age. And then
Exactly.
you're walking to school and back home from school. And then at practice, you're, working out at a high
Yeah.
level for, sometimes 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
So they're just you're not sitting around on the
It's
computer all
very,
day.
it's very different. It's very different. And it's so funny because sometimes I'll be like, with my son who's 4, I'll be like, there's days he'll be sitting, let's say, in front of the TV, or he'll be sitting in front of a screen. And I'm like, this is like what I do like all day, most of the days. He like never does this. He
Right.
sometimes does this, but he doesn't often do this. Like he's often really just like running around and moving and outside. And, so it's sometimes I'll look at him and I'll be like, oh, he's just sitting in front of the screen all day. But it's like, well, I'm very physically active, but I also sit in front of a computer and have, emails to answer and have work to do. So, you sometimes are like, look back and be like, oh, actually, that's kind of what I do all day. But obviously, different stage of life. So
Yeah.
it's, important to remember that. Okay, so I think we're going to get to the thyroid and the hormone questions now. And if we don't, I'll try to get back to that. So hormonal change impact women's metabolism through the life cycle. So the menstrual cycle, so that's like kind of the first thing. So the hormonal changes that accompany the menstrual cycle influence metabolism, as well as appetite, mood, and energy levels. In fact, a woman's metabolic rate is higher or lower depending on the phase of her cycle. So there are, the different stages of the menstrual cycle, and metabolic rate can change throughout these different phases. I don't actually know, where it's higher, where it's lower. And I happen to think it's probably pretty dependent on the person.
Right.
But I think it's just important to note that it does, it can change and can depend on which phase we're in. Pregnancy. So for those who become pregnant, gaining excess weight can impact metabolism long term. So changes in sleeping patterns that increase hunger hormones are common as well. So, those who during pregnancy, they're gaining weight. There's typically, based on a few factors, but generally BMI, there's recommended amounts of weight to gain throughout pregnancy. It's great if we kind of fall within that. Sometimes it's more, and women who typically gain a lot more than those recommended amounts, that can have like lasting effects on metabolism long term. So that's just something to really keep in mind. It's not 100% guaranteed that that's going to happen, but there is some correlation between the two. So just an important thing to note. So menopause, this is a really big one. So menopause changes weight distribution. So before premenopause, our body kind of signals, or our brain kind of signals our body to distribute our weight somewhat evenly. And then after during menopause, it's common to hold the weight in the stomach area. Our brain kind of signals our body to kind of distribute that weight differently. And it usually is within the stomach and like hips area, which is a risk factor for metabolic diseases. So the change in metabolic diseases can be like, type 2 diabetes and things like that. The change in estrogen levels during menopause has become a big impact on metabolism as well. So we mentioned estrogen before, and so it's not even specific to it being high or low. It can be, if it's really high or if it's really low, they can both impact metabolism. Here we go. So here we're at thyroid. So I hope this answers whoever's typed in that question.
Yes. Can thyroid gland increase or decrease metabolism was the question.
Yes. Okay. So the thyroid is an endocrine gland that has a significant impact on metabolism. There is a lot of people who, let's say, are holding on to weight and they feel like it's really difficult for them to lose weight, or if they're losing really weight really quickly without really trying. One of the first things that if a doctor notices, or sometimes they'll notice on their own, they'll be told to go check. Excuse me. They'll be told, thank you. They'll be told to go check their thyroid levels, right? So there's hypothyroidism and there's hyperthyroidism. So hypothyroidism is when there's low levels of this thyroid hormone. And this can allow for, a little bit more weight gain, a little bit more difficult to lose weight. It really slows down the metabolism. It causes us to be more tired. There are some long-term effects as well. If somebody doesn't check their thyroid for, years and years and years, there can be some swelling, like some facial swelling or other swelling in the body. So it's definitely a really important thing for us to get our thyroid hormone checked pretty often. Because
And where can people go to get their thyroid checked?
so usually, like, if you go to your doctor, if your doctor has a lab there, or any lab, like, I don't know what they have, in New York. I know they have like LabCorp, and they have Sunrise Lab. There's like so many different labs. Any lab, any clinic really should be able to test your thyroid. It's not it's usually like if you're going to go get your bloods taken,
Right.
and you have a prescription from your doctor, whatever it is, thyroid, it will always essentially be on there. There's no special order you need. Our thyroid hormone can change like that, our levels rather. So it's really important. We can't say, oh, well, I got them checked 2 years ago, because in 6 months the levels can change. So it's
Oh,
really,
wow.
really, really, really important to get our thyroid levels checked really yearly, I would say. Um, so women are more likely to develop a thyroid disorder compared to men, especially after pregnancy and menopause. So it's actually really interesting because basically HCG, which is the hormone level when women are pregnant, that can inhibit our thyroid hormone, right? So sometimes women in their first trimester will have very, very low thyroid. Their levels will be very, very low. Their hormone level will be very low. Then, usually they want to get it checked out later on in pregnancy to make sure that it kind of went to a normal range. But even within a normal range, sometimes they'll stay very, very low, and they'll stay lower than usual. And sometimes, after pregnancy, HCG is out of the body and your thyroid kind of goes back to its normal level. And sometimes it kind of stays at that low level, and it causes things like, like thyroid disorders like hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's or things like that. So pregnancy has a very, very big, there's a big effect on
Right.
our thyroid level. So, a 6-week postpartum checkup, thyroid's one of the first things that they're going to check, because they see a lot of women go through these changes. And the same thing, so I mentioned the low thyroid hormone. So for hyperthyroidism as well, we see pregnancy also cause that. Not as much. It's more common for the levels to be lower, just because the HCG hormone does inhibit this thyroid hormone, but it's not crazy to see that it does go higher as well. So it's a very important thing. And menopause, just like pregnancy, also can really impact the thyroid hormone.
And these are the two that you
These
just
are the
spoke
two that I
about,
just
lower and
spoke
higher.
about.
Yeah. And
Exactly. So
if it turns out that you have one of these,
mhm.
do you get on medication? Are there other things that you can do?
It's a really good question. So the best thing to do is to go on medication. Any doctor will tell you that. Any dietitian will tell you that. Dietitians are all into, food is medicine, which I am 100% a proponent of as well. I think there are foods that can kind of go alongside medicine to kind of help keep our thyroids at bay, right? Things like with low iodine. Um, but the best thing to do is to go on to like a medication like Synthroid, for example. That's really going to be the best thing. That's probably going to be the number one thing to do, especially if levels are really low or really high. There's really not a lot in the diet that will drastically change those levels. It is going to be pretty important to be on a medication. So, a really good question. And I'm glad that you answered that. So, I just want to go through the symptoms because I think we spoke about what the hypo versus hyper is, but symptoms, just again, being kind of in tune with our bodies. So, symptoms include of hypothyroidism. So, weight gain, low energy levels, dry skin, hair, and dry skin and hair, cold hands and feet, right? They kind of affects like our blood circulation as well. So we'll feel, colder in our hands and feet. Hyperthyroidism on the other end, so rapid weight loss, irregular heartbeat, right? Sometimes we'll feel like we have like heart palpitations almost, or really, really fast heartbeat, or kind of fast and slow, just pretty irregular. And also hand tremors. That's also a really big symptom of hyperthyroidism as well. So definitely, don't freak out, because there are, great ways to medically manage hypo and hyperthyroidism, but it is a really important hormone level to get checked out.
We also have a comment from Deborah Kestenbaum. The info you are sharing is so amazing. At least the menopause issue makes so much more sense. Not easy, but I guess it's a part of life.
It really is. It's definitely not easy, but it is a part of life. So thank you for sharing that. Now PCOS. So PCOS is something which it stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome. And there's a lot of women who are diagnosed with this, either, earlier on during, whether they have very, very irregular or barely get periods, or their menstrual cycle. And sometimes women who are trying for a very long time to conceive and are having difficulty, then, they'll go for some testing and they will be diagnosed with this polycystic ovarian syndrome. So it's a hormonal and autoimmune disease that has lifelong impacts on metabolism. So women with PCOS are more likely to be overweight or obese. And a lot of that has to do also because they're insulin resistant. So they are insulin resistant. Sometimes they'll be told to be put on like a diabetes medication, specifically metformin, which is a diabetes drug. A lot of times they will be put on this to kind of help with the insulin resistance, as well as high blood pressure. And these are all examples of metabolic effects, by the way. But so yeah, a lot of times, women with PCOS, especially before, they do want to try to get pregnant, they'll be put on, they want to kind of set themselves up for success. So a few things they'll do is they'll go on something like metformin, and they'll also be told by their doctors, like by an OBGYN, to maybe go on a lower inflammation diet, which can also help kind of deflare, I guess. Well, I don't know if that's a word, but to ensure that our PCOS doesn't flare up, and just set themselves up for the most success in terms of conceiving.
Yeah, I have several girlfriends that have this. So yeah, it's pretty
common. It's pretty common. It does not mean that women can't get pregnant naturally. Women have. Sometimes it's more difficult. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes they need fertility treatments. But there's so many women with PCOS, and so many of them have successfully, gotten pregnant and have had babies. So definitely not anything to really worry about. Just something to keep in mind and speak to your doctor about when it is, time to, potentially start thinking about conceiving.
Yeah.
Okay. Next. Whoops. Okay. Healthy habits for metabolic health. So this is we're getting towards the end of, tonight's presentation. So what are some healthy things that we can do to kind of, like I mentioned before, set ourselves up for success? So the media often refers to specific diets, foods, and supplements that boost metabolism, right? We'll hear, oh, this drug boosts metabolism, or Ozempic, as I mentioned before, which is, all over the media right now. I'm sure you can understand how my feelings on that. But while these claims can hold some truth, most of the time they don't hold all of the truth, and it's really not worth wasting your money on products that promise drastic changes overnight. They'll be like, oh, in 2 weeks you can lose 15 pounds. Don't waste your money. It's likely a scam.
What is a healthy rate if you are intending on losing weight? Say you're trying to lose like 30 pounds.
1 to 2 pounds a week is a healthy rate of losing weight.
So 15 pounds in 2 weeks would not be a good idea.
No, would not be a good idea. So 1 to 2 pounds a week is that's kind of like the rule of thumb in the nutrition world. When people work with, patients or clients who are looking to lose weight, that's like typically what they'll say. But anything more than that can potentially lead to to more dangerous outcomes. So the saying slow and steady wins the race. It's true also for weight loss. It's also the most sustainable way to keep that weight
Yeah,
off.
that's what I was gonna say also. Like it feels
Yeah,
like if you take, you get sick, or, you've, go on some crash diet for a week. Anytime I've done that in the past, like done like a juice cleanse or something, it always comes
exactly,
back, because it's not, first of all,
exactly.
it's not sustainable to
It's
eat
not
like that
sustainable.
in the way
Exactly.
that's causing you to lose weight. We have another comment. Does losing
Yeah,
weight increase your metabolism?
that's a perfect. Your juicing comment couldn't have led better to this question. It really depends how we're losing weight. If we're doing one of these like quick, like, juice cleanses or really, really unsustainable diets, then no, a lot of the times actually when we do start eating regularly, it will almost like go the opposite way and our metabolism will actually slow down even more. But if we adapt a lifestyle that, and then we do like small restrictions, right? No, we don't like to do big restrictions, but small restrictions, something that's very more sustainable and kind of allows us to lose weight at a steady, healthy rate, then yes, that can definitely help, uh, you know, fasten our metabolism. So very good question. Okay, exercise regularly. And Joy, I'm sure you totally agree with this. And it's super, super important. Physical activity is so important. Um, Especially that builds muscle, right? We spoke about muscle. We spoke about weight bearing exercises like strength training. These can increase your metabolic rate as well. So it's so important that we're physically active. And this is because muscle burns more calories than fat, even at rest. So
Yeah, I
just
think it's
super
like
important.
very big conversation, obviously, especially over the past couple years
Hmm.
with COVID and having everyone's routines
Yes.
disrupted. I know really, I was going to hot yoga, like, which like the idea of doing that during the
During
lockdown is
COVID.
like
Yeah.
probably the one exercise you're not going to definitely see come back
Yes.
first, like 5 days a week, and then went to, total lockdown. And I think like the two biggest disruptors for of a regular exercise for me in my life was I tore my ACL
Hmm.
about eight or maybe 10 years ago now. I don't know. I can't keep track. The years are smushing together, but
Yes.
I was very, very active. I was playing in a soccer league, in a women's soccer league and a competitive league, and tore my ACL. So went from being like hyper active to very sedentary, because I could not walk. There was really no exercise you can do, and you can only eat perfect for, so long.
Exactly.
So it's basically a year recovery of being able to get back to the level of that kind of regular exercise. And that was
Hmm.
like the biggest change that I had seen in my body up until that point, because it was such a drastic, like high level exercise and working out to like
Hmm.
literally nothing.
Yeah, like cold
Um,
turkey.
yeah, and then also over the past couple years with COVID, having to adjust to working out in the house or
Hmm.
completely changing my workouts from what I was doing to walking or running.
Yes, 100%. That's a really good point. Actually, when I was finishing my master's, it was March. I was completed my master's in May of 2020. And I was doing for my final, I had to do like a capstone class. And we did something, I don't even remember what it was anymore. It was some research project. And it was about physical activity and food. And when I sent out the survey, it was like March 20th. So it was right after like lockdown started. And so many people were like, well, like my physical activity changed so much within the last week. And I'm kind of like, oh my God, I planned this in January when I didn't realize everyone's like whole world was going to change and everyone's physical
Right.
activity changed, but there was so, especially in, I think people then started to like, a lot of people started, kind of doing things on Zoom and just like figuring out ways to work around it. But like, especially really that first, like those first few weeks, it was just like this crazy shift. And I just remember like freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, everyone, like this is going to be a disaster because nobody's physical activity is what it was,
It's gonna be the
2
same.
months ago. So
Yeah, unless you were
it's
already
definitely changed.
on Peloton, it was gonna be a
Exactly.
different world. We have another question from Jacob.
Mhm.
Cardio or weights for weight loss? Part of the question. And then he also asked, what do the athletes that you cover do to lose weight? Focus more on weights or cardio?
Let
Um,
you answer that one.
okay, well, I am not a dietitian or a physical trainer, but I do know that depending on what your sport is, obviously, you're probably not going to gain too much weight. A track athlete, for example, is not going to gain the kind of weight that, say, an offensive lineman will gain if they're dealing with a weight loss situation. Um, but in general, if you are a basketball player or a football player, like your workouts are going to be somewhat similar, but you're going to obviously have way more cardio if you're a basketball player. And generally, if your guy, for example, will come in off of an injury, if they're playing basketball and they haven't, they're out of shape, then getting in game shape is a term that, you're doing cardio, but you're doing it at a higher level when you're actually competing. So I think it very much depends on what sport you're playing. And I think that I would assume, again, I'm not their trainer, but I would assume that a lot of those, football, baseball, hockey, basketball, that weights are a big part of losing weight and getting back into shape, because they also want to build a lot of strength, because these are, in some cases, collision or contact sports too. So you don't want to do all cardio.
Good answer. It's really interesting. It's a different world. Sports for sports players, I think physical activity, right? It's just
Yeah,
like it's so different. It's like it's a different science than
it,
I
it
think it
it's
is for
definitely a
everybody else.
science, and they have tracking on everything. They track how much
I
athletes
know.
sleep. They
Yeah.
track everything that you eat, how
Yeah.
many minutes, like everything is very much
Right.
documented and
Right.
digital now. But
But I
this
think that
is,
shows, yeah.
well, I mean, it's $1 billion, these are $1 billion
Yeah.
industries, and their bodies are, part of
Yeah.
being healthy, as part of that moving. So
Yeah. But I think that shows a lot, like the fact that all of that's tracked, I think that shows for us, obviously on a much, much smaller scale, at a much smaller level, that all of these lifestyle changes, sleep, physical activity, nutrition can all like really affect performance in to some degree, right? Not, we're obviously not talking about performance of, professional sports, but just performance in general and just how how we feel and that kind of stuff. So I think that's just something that like we can take to to learn lessons for ourselves as well.
and longevity, as we're
Yeah,
talking about all these changes that you go throughout
I
your life.
agree.
A professional athlete is going to do the most that they can to preserve their body playing or performing at a high level for as long as they can, so that
Right.
muscle memory and, being able to keep your body, working at that high level for longer, usually lasts if don't get severe injuries, and all of that matters later on in life also. So staying active and not going from, on these waves of inactivity to high levels of activity is better for you also.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, stand when you can. So you may have sedentary lifestyle if you spend most of the day sitting. So take short breaks from sitting by standing up, right? You see someone on a standing desk. So standing desks, I think a lot of has gotten a lot of like rep lately, especially with a lot of work from home. But even in offices, just like ergonomics, I think in general has become like so like in an office setting has become so popular within the last 10 years, maybe even less. And standing desks, like have you definitely see them around the offices more. But a lot of it, it's definitely helpful for posture, but a lot of it is just like sitting, just even standing alone can, we are burning more by standing. So, definitely can be helpful for more than just posture. Walk around, right? Even walking around your office, walking around your house, just kind of moving around, going up and down stairs. These can all
Getting your
just
steps in.
getting your steps in can definitely just be these small things can just benefit overall health and metabolism. Ditch dieting. So eating too few calories can slow down your metabolism. And that's why I mentioned before, it really depends how you lose your weight for that question. Because when we're eating too few calories for what we really need, it can actually slow down our metabolism and not actually do what we want it to do. And this is because your body is trying to preserve energy. So it's slowing down, right? It's not gonna work at its fastest rate. A proper caloric deficit is needed to lose weight without damaging your metabolism. So we don't want, too many calories, too much of a caloric deficit. We want it to be balanced. So if we're very, very, very physically active, we want to make sure we're taking in the calories to kind of support that amount of physical activity. We don't want to not be eating all day and be working out all day, because actually that will slow down our metabolism.
We have a question. Is that why
Sure.
some people eat several small meals throughout the day instead of 3 big meals?
It's definitely a reason. Excuse me. It's definitely a reason, for sure. It doesn't really matter. People can have several small meals, like they say 6 small meals or 3, bigger meals and 2 smaller snacks. It doesn't really matter. Some people find that their metabolism works better, and is more efficient, and they kind of are able to track in their minds. And I'm not saying track because it's such an old practice to do calorie counting, but just be mindful of what we're eating. And I think for some people, it's easier to do that when they're doing the 6 small meals. But doing 3, larger meals and 2 smaller snacks is also fine. So it's just all about making sure we're being cognizant of what we're eating.
There's another question. I think we talked about this earlier, but how does progesterone affect metabolism? Did we mention that?
So it was not progesterone, it was estrogen. And I
Okay.
apologize if I did say progesterone, but we spoke about how before estrogen, like we spoke about, in menopause specifically, if they can be either
Okay.
too high or too low, it can cause a slowdown in metabolism. So not progesterone. It was estrogen and testosterone. That's what I meant to say before. And for some reason, have progesterone in my head, but not progesterone. So prioritizing protein. So protein is going to be super, super important as well for metabolism. And I find a lot of people don't eat enough protein. And sometimes they'll be like, oh, I don't understand. Like, why is my metabolism slowing down? And sometimes it's really as simple as not eating enough protein. So we have proteins, carbs, and fats. Those are the 3 macronutrients. So while they're all really important, obviously, protein's important to prevent muscle loss. So this is something when I was doing my dietetic internship, and I was working in the hospital, which is pretty much my only experience in a clinical setting. Something really, really important to that we focus on as dietitians, especially with patients who are there for longer than a few days, is protein intake. And sometimes they'll really have to go in and monitor that and like do a calorie count on specifically on protein intake. And that's because just kind of lying in bed can cause muscle wasting at a very, very fast pace. And muscle wasting can cause like a whole myriad of other issues.
Right.
And something also in long-term care facilities and in, nursing homes, they're very, very focused on protein intake as well, because of, the understandably so more sedentary lifestyle of, men and women in their older ages, men at an older age. Protein intake is going to be super, super important. And a lot of times they'll see with a specific resident or a specific patient, if they see they're not doing enough, there's always dietitians in these facilities. And a lot of times they'll have to track their protein intake, because muscle wasting happens really quickly. And it can be pretty detrimental. And I hate to sound dramatic by saying that, but it can be very, very detrimental, and it can lead to a lot of issues, and long-term issues. So definitely super, super important to make sure we're getting enough protein. So obviously I spoke about that on the clinical level, but let's take that to like our world. Protein is going to be super important to just prevent muscle wasting for all of us.
Right.
Drinking water, and this is for really any liquid, right? Any liquid that's, non-sugary beverages. So making sure we're getting enough protein helps to prevent muscle loss, and muscle loss is common. Wait, where is that? Hold on. Muscle loss is common with restrictive diets. Sorry, that was weird. Muscle loss is common with restrictive diets that promote under eating, right? So we mentioned that before, that when we're not getting enough calories, there can be more muscle loss. Drinking water is also going to be super, super important to just help our metabolism, because when we are drinking water, it cools out. We want the water that we drink, whatever the liquids that we drink, it's gonna, in order to warm those liquids up to body temperature, it's burning energy. So it's also gonna help, keep our metabolism up to speed. So we want to make sure we have enough so that metabolism keeps working in order to make sure that that those liquids are being warmed up to room temperature.
I definitely do not drink enough water.
I think it's like a very common problem.
I've tried every solution, like trying to get a refillable one, doing the one with the things on it. I just do not do it. I try so much. Try so much, but I do drink a lot of bubble water, but I don't think that counts.
That's okay. It totally counts. Totally counts.
Okay. Well, I feel a little bit better than that.
Yeah, no. The thing with bubble water, they say, is that like sometimes it will like make you full, so you may not eat enough at meals, like things like that. But in terms of actually getting liquids into your body, it's totally the same.
Okay.
There's just other things. Yes, for sure. You're doing great. Sleep. So lack of sleep decreases the number of calories you burn daily. So getting enough sleep is super, super important. And this is going back to what Joy said about, tracking the athlete's sleep, right? It's really, really important that we get enough sleep. This is due to dysregulated blood sugar that interferes with hunger hormones. So sleep is super important. I know so many people who just get 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night, and it is just not enough. We really need 8 hours of sleep. 7 is fine too, but we should really, really try to get 8 hours of sleep.
I'm not going to fight you on that. I am a huge sleeper. And if I don't get enough sleep, there's everything in the day is wrong. So I know people like that.
I'm with you.
I only need like 4 hours. I'm like, do you? Because
No.
I don't know if that's healthy.
It's not healthy. And at some point they're going to crash, or some part of them is going to
make them slow down.
Exactly. It is going to make them slow down. You really can't live on 4 hours of sleep every night. It's very, very difficult, unless it's just someone who just really gets used to that. But at some point, something's going to crash. So definitely want to make sure we're getting enough sleep. So recipes for women's metabolism. So tasty and nutritious recipes using affordable ingredients. So here you're going to see, here's a quinoa chickpea salad. So we're using things like quinoa, which is a whole grain. It's also a protein, right? Chickpeas are a protein. And then just a bunch of really great, different vegetables to put in there. And this is making sure that we're getting pretty much all of our nutrients into this one salad. Super, super easy. It's just one example. Obviously, this can really be a meal because we are getting protein. Quinoa is a complete protein, so that's great. And just something super, super affordable and easy. So as I mentioned, protein from quinoa and chickpeas stabilize blood sugar levels, sustain energy, and support growth. Fiber from the veggies and chickpeas that promotes bowel health, which is important, and it keeps us fuller for longer. monounsaturated fats from olive oil. So that's a healthy fat that's important for brain and for heart health. And that is everything. So we're really right on time. If anyone has any more questions, um,
Yeah, go ahead and throw it in the
throw it
questions there if
in
you
the
have any
box.
more. Is there a place that people can find more recipes?
Yes, everyone can go. I'll go right to the last slide. You can go to fairmeals.org. Excuse me.
Bless
You can
you.
go to fairmeals.org. There's more recipes there. You can follow us on Instagram. If anybody has any questions, feel free to email me. The email's right here. And really just check out our other webinars. Joy, thank you so much. This was
Thank
awesome.
you. No, this was great. Like I said at the beginning, this is a conversation that we as women have constantly, and it obviously has changed over, the decades of my life, and how your body responds to
Yes.
different things. And like we talked about the different changes, just even for everyone over the past couple years, it's been a big topic of conversation, staying healthy and being just more aware of our bodies and everything that is going on with them. So this
Yeah,
was really great.
100%. Yes, I totally agree with you. And I think as women, it's really important to be in tune with our bodies and just being in tune can help us really be as healthy as we can. So really thank you and thank you everybody for
Thank
joining
you.
us and have a good night.
Thank you guys.